has been a minute, but what is going on, everybody? How is everybody doing today? Welcome back here today to the Just Ballin podcast. Happy opening night for the 2025 NBA season. We're going to get the pod fully back into swing here now that the NBA season is upon us. I needed a little bit of a break pretty much up until the season started. Was getting a little bit burnt out, but I am super excited for the 2025 season. I'm recording this on tip-off day, the 22nd. You guys should also be seeing this then as well. And I'm going to be going through one prediction, probably more than that, maybe a couple predictions for every single team for this upcoming season. Just maybe a player that I think could break out, a player that may take a step back, someone could get traded, maybe a slow start. We're going to go through this division by division, and I'm really excited to get into this. So we are going to start things off with the Atlantic Division. We're going to start off with my New York Knicks. And honestly, for the Knicks this season, I would not be surprised if we saw a slow start from them. We already are seeing a banged up Precious Achiuwa. We know that Mitchell Robinson is going to be out till January. Landry Shamet just got cut because he dislocated his shoulder in the preseason. And the Knicks bench right now is Miles McBride, Cameron Payne, Jericho Sims, Ariel Hukporti, who's a rookie, Tyler Kolek, who's a rookie. It's not the deepest bench in the world. So I do think that the Knicks are going to have their struggles gelling together. But if this starting five could stay healthy, I do believe it is the second best 1 through 5 in the NBA, but we need to see the chemistry build up throughout the season. That's why I wouldn't be surprised if they were around the 6th seed in December, and I don't think we should panic. I don't think they're going to be double-digit games out of first place, but I could see them not having the start we could expect with them getting Karl-Anthony Towns and Mikal Bridges this offseason. Mikal Bridges has had a horrible shot in the preseason. It is not falling whatsoever. The hitch looks disgusting. Yeah, it's not pretty right now for the Knicks. And Josh Hart, he said he feels lost in the preseason and would be open to going to the second unit. So we could possibly see that. And Miles McBride enters the starting rotation. But like I said, I do think that they could win it all if they're healthy, but I do believe it is going to be somewhat of a slower start for them at the start of this year's season. Next up, we're going to talk about the Brooklyn Nets. I do think they end up as the worst team in the NBA. I believe they're going to sell off their veterans at the deadline like Cam Johnson. I think he could end up maybe as a Cav, a Maverick, a 76er, Dorian Finney-Smith, probably the same destinations as well. And then I also could see Dennis Schroeder traded at the deadline if he could put up some efficient numbers as the true number one point guard in Brooklyn throughout the first half of the year. But I don't know if he's going to get enough of a return, and he could eventually be bought out after the deadline, and that could be one of the premier buyout players too if he does end up getting bought out. So yeah, I don't think this is a crazy prediction. I think the Nets are going to be bad. I think they want to be bad. They probably want to see what they can get out of Cam Thomas defensively if Sean Marks wants to commit long-term money to him. And he doesn't seem like the player that Sean Marks would commit long-term money to, but obviously he could just be a scorer throughout this rebuild. But really, they just want to get lucky in the 2025 draft lottery. They want to capture the flag. They want to get Ace Bailey. They want to get somebody that could turn this franchise around and get a homegrown talent in the building, something they haven't had in quite some time, because the last big names in Brooklyn, Mikal Bridges, KD, Kyrie, Harden, D'Lo, all these guys were traded for or signed for. So I'm sure they'd like to get somebody homegrown, because the best guys on the roster right now that are homegrown are Claxton and Cam Thomas. Next up, we have the Boston Celtics. I think they end up as the best team in the Eastern Conference, but I do not think that they make it to the NBA Finals. This is a very long season, and I think they could be okay with not being the 1 seed, but I think they're going to be the 1 seed. I mean, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are such a good duo together, and they're both just amazing on both ends of the floor. And I think that is huge. At the end of the day, you have guys that could guard other teams' best defenders, and other teams' best defenders need to guard Brown and Tatum because of how lethal they are on the perimeter, inside, attacking the rim. You have one of the best backcourts in the NBA in Derek White and Drew Holiday. Definitely the best defensive backcourt in the NBA right there going forward, and I think they're going to be great. I wonder if we'll see a little bit of aging to Drew Holiday, but he did look good for Team USA in the Olympics. Al Horford is getting up there in age, and KP's already got some injuries to him. And I think this Celtics bench is actually not too bad. Like, you talk about guys like Luke Cornett, rookie Baylor Shireman. They did cut Lonnie Walker, but you have Sam Hauser, you have Peyton Pritchard. It's definitely a viable bench. Xavier Tillman, it's fine, and I do think they're going to be in the conference finals, but my prediction for them is that they aren't going to go back. We haven't seen a team go back to the finals since the 2018-2019 Warriors, but the Celtics definitely have the talent to do so. I think they're going to make it to the Eastern Conference Finals, but come up short of repeating. Next up, we do have the Philadelphia 76ers. I think, like the Knicks, they could have a slower start. It's apparently happening that Joel Embiid is not going to be playing back-to-backs, so I think they're going to hover around the 4 seed to the 6 seed all season long. When Embiid, Paul George, and Maxey are all out there together, they're going to look like one of the best teams in the league, but you're always going to have those question marks with Embiid and his health. We'll see if there's going to be any aging thing with Paul George. I do expect them to trade KJ Martin at the deadline, along with one of those future first-round picks, either from the Clippers or maybe one of their first-round picks, to maybe get somebody like a Cam Johnson or someone that is available at the deadline. I think in the playoffs, they could beat anybody in the East outside of Boston and New York. Last year, they had the advantage that the Knicks didn't have a floor spacing 5. Isaiah Hartenstein could not come out to the perimeter. Now they do in Karl-Anthony Towns. So Embiid can't play drop coverage. He's going to have to go out to the perimeter. And I haven't seen Embiid in the fully healthy in the playoffs maybe yet in his career. So I don't know if it's going to happen this year. And I do think, though, they could be Cleveland, Indiana, Orlando. I don't think that's a hot take whatsoever, but that's what I'm predicting from Philadelphia this season. Next up, we have the Toronto Raptors here in the Atlantic Division, and I don't think they're going to be good this year. I think they're going to be one of the worst teams in the Eastern Conference, but I think Scotty Barnes is going to take a leap to being an all-star once again and flirt with an all-NBA consideration. He looked fantastic in the preseason as a playmaker, as a finisher inside, and the jumper, man, it has been getting better and better. If you watch any bit of film of what he looked like at Florida State, it is a night and day difference from what he looks like now. I think Immanuel Quickley is going to take a leap as well. I think he's going to show everybody that he's a solid defender. He's going to be one of the best playmakers in the league. I think he can average and flirt with 8-9 assists this season and show that he's an elite three-point shooter. I don't think he's going to be an all-star, though. And I think Grady Dick is going to take a leap as well. He looked phenomenal in the preseason. He looked really good in the second half last year. I don't think he's going to be an all-star by any means, but I think he's going to be a good enough three-point shooter and playmaker for this team that it could be in the backcourt with Immanuel Quickley going forward. I want to say RJ is going to break out too, but I just don't think that everybody on this team is going to break out. I don't think they're going to be great this year, but who knows? Maybe they prove me wrong, and maybe we see 5 Atlantic Division teams in the playoffs. Next up here in the Central Division, we're going to start with the Indiana Pacers. I think their depth is going to show that is a strong suit. They have one of the deepest rosters in the Eastern Conference, but I don't think that Andrew Nembhard or Benedict Mathurin is going to, I think, fully take ability to break out this season just because of the lack of opportunity, because this is Halliburton's team. He's running this offense. Siakam is going to be the secondary scorer, and there's only so much ball to go around to get Jarvis Walker, Miles Turner, McConnell, Nembhard, Mathurin, all these guys involved that I wonder if Nembhard or Mathurin is going to be able to take the next step. If I had to guess, it would be Nembhard over Mathurin, but I think just the lack of opportunity is going to limit one of those guys from reaching the next potential. Like Nembhard, coming off that playoff run, a lot of people think he can win Most Improved. Or Mathurin, who was a top 10 pick back in 2022 and was really playing well before he got injured last year. I just think that their depth is maybe going to be something that's going to limit one of those guys from breaking out, but I do think that they are going to make the playoffs once again. For the Detroit Pistons, I think the addition of the veterans will help, and I think Cade and Jaden Ivey are going to have their first positive year together since they've been in the same backcourt. Ivy has looked great in the preseason. You guys know how high I am on Cade Cunningham, so I think that they are going to be a great backcourt duo this year. I don't think they make the playoffs. I'd be very surprised if they made the play-in tournament. Like, as much as Tobias Harris, Tim Hardaway Jr., and Malik Beasley will help Cade offensively, it's not going to help them out too much defensively. And I'm just thinking about Tobias Harris and Jalen Duren in that front court, and it is not going to be pretty defensively. There's only so much Asor Thompson and Ron Holland can do, and Isaiah Stewart to help those guys out on that end of the floor. But I think JB Bickerstaff is going to bring this team in the right direction to hopefully being a playoff team in 2026, but I do not think it's going to happen in 2025. For the Cleveland Cavaliers, I think they're also going to be a really good regular season team. I would not be surprised if they were the 2 seed in the Eastern Conference. They were really good last year before, even with the injuries, of Evan Mobley and Darius Garland. They fell off a little bit towards the end of the season. We know that they dropped to the 4 seed in the East, but there was a real opportunity that they could have snagged the 2 seed, and then that ended up going to the Knicks towards the end of the year. I think Darius Garland is primed for a bounce-back season. Last year, he had the jaw injury, and that is really going to limit your confidence at attacking the rim. I think his confidence overall didn't look great, but I think after not getting traded this offseason, they re-signed Mobley, Allen, Mitchell. Garland's going to field this team together, and I think he's going to have a big bounce-back year. But I do think we're going to have the Evan Mobley, Jared Allen question again in April or May, and we're going to ask ourselves, can Mobley reach his full offensive potential with Jared Allen clogging the paint? But I do like Mobley this year. I sprinkled a little bit on his most improved player odds. I think there is a chance he could fully break out, but his shot needs to come around. Maybe off that contract extension it will, but yeah, for them, I think there's going to be a ceiling on what they could be in the playoffs together. For the Milwaukee Bucks, I think their lack of depth is definitely going to hurt them. Giannis needs to carry this team throughout the regular season. Chris Middleton is already out indefinitely, and obviously he's a great complementary piece to Giannis, but this team is not getting any younger. Brook is up there in age. Middleton, Dame, 3 of their top 4 guys are getting up there, and maybe you're going to start to regress. Brook is in the final year of his deal. Same with Bobby Portis. So I think that Milwaukee is going to make a notable trade in February. So that means I think Brook Lopez, Bobby Portis, or Chris Middleton is going to be off this team unless they want to dish out 2031 first-round picks. And with what's going on with Giannis, I don't know if I would do that. I think I would just be a little bit hesitant on that, but I wouldn't be totally shocked if we see a Brandon Ingram, maybe a DeAndre Ayton. I don't know about Ayton, but more like a Brandon Ingram type player on this team after the February trade deadline, because I would not be totally surprised if they got off to a disappointing start and maybe they're around the 6th, 7th seed come January. And I don't love Doc Rivers as their head coach. So maybe the owner or the front office is going to get pressure from the owner, maybe from the fans, that they need to make a move in February. So I would not be totally shocked if we see Milwaukee make a notable trade in February. I'm just trying to figure out who it could be. Like I said, Brandon Ingram, would he cost too much? One of the Blazers guys, like, do they want to get a Jeremy Grant? I don't know. But yeah, I do think Milwaukee's going to have to make a move. For the Chicago Bulls, I think they are too good for a top pick, but they're too bad to make the playoffs. And I don't believe that Zach LaVine or Nikola Vucevic are going to be traded. So I'm sorry, Bulls fans. You probably just hated everything I said right there. But this team has a lot of talent. And I don't think that, unless they get extremely lucky in the lottery, are going to get a top pick. Maybe they get the Atlanta Hawks luck of last year where you go from 11-1. That can happen, but it's very rare that that ends up happening. And I don't think this team is good enough to make the playoffs. And the LaVine contract being too big, maybe there is a desperate team out there, though, like the Clippers or the Warriors or the Lakers or the Bucks, and they trade for Zach LaVine or Nikola Vucevic. But I would bet on that they don't end up getting traded just due to, 1, the LaVine contract size. That could be more of an offseason deal. And 2, Vucevic's defense. But we'll see. Maybe Golden State, if it doesn't cost much, would be interested in Vucevic, who could space the floor for this offense and could be a nice counterpart to to Draymond Green in that front court. I mean, that could definitely happen. But I don't think that the Bulls are going to finish anywhere better than maybe the 10th seed this year. I would be shocked if they were a top 8 seed in the East, but I am excited about another year of Kobe White after the momentum he had last year. I think Josh Giddey is actually going to be pretty good for them this season, and I think like they have talented guys. I mean, there's a reason why they extended Patrick Williams. I'm excited to see what Montes Buzelis can do. I'd assume who broke out last year. Like, there's talent on this Bulls team, but I wonder what's the continuity, what's the chemistry going to look like this year? Will Billy Donovan even be back next year, or is this team just pushing it off year by year to fully enter into a total rebuild? Last division here in the Eastern Conference, we're going to talk about the Southeast Division. So I think for the Hornets, we'll start off with them. I think they flirt with the play-in tournament all season long if LaMelo is healthy, something we haven't really seen since year number 2 back in 2022, where they made the play-in tournament. But if LaMelo is healthy, I think he could break out this season to being an all-star again and being someone that could flirt with an all-NBA team and bring this team to the play-in tournament, maybe even host a play-in tournament game in the 9-10 matchup, because I think Brandon Miller is going to take a big year 2 leap. I could see him taking the Paolo Banchero year 2 leap that we saw last year. And if LaMelo is banged up a little bit and Brandon Miller is the full number 1, I think he could be an all-star consideration if the Hornets aren't at the bottom of the Eastern Conference come the all-star voting. So for the Orlando Magic, I don't think KCP is going to be too noticeable in the regular season. I do think that Paolo Banchero is going to be an all-star once again. And I think if we see this team win more games this year throughout the regular season, it's going to be more so internal development than the addition of KCP. It's going to be Franz getting a shot back. It's going to be Paolo being more consistent in the half court. Maybe Jalen Suggs, who just got a massive payday, is going to take a step with his offensive creation as well, because he's going to be the starting point guard. And the last time we saw Suggs as a starting point guard didn't really work out well. He worked out a lot better as the 2 guard last year. So I'm definitely going to be keeping my eyes on the Orlando Magic, because I think like the Pacers, like the Cavs, they have, I think, the ceiling to be a 1 or a 2 seed in the Eastern Conference for sure, if everything goes their way, if they could stay healthy. But I also think they can have somewhat of a little bit of a step back year, I guess you could say, and they could be a 7th or an 8th seed, which I guess would be disappointing for those teams specifically. So for Orlando, I think they could definitely win this division 100%. I would say they are the favorites to do so. And probably the team with the second best odds on winning the division has to be the Miami Heat. I do think that their backcourt is going to struggle defensively between Terry Rozier and Tyler Hero, and there's only so much Bam Adebayo can do to help out this team. I think Jaime Hawkins is actually going to be a little bit stagnant from his rookie year. He got off to a great start. Teams are now watching more film on him, and then I think he kind of bounced. He didn't do great in the second half, I should say. And then I do think that Nikola Jovic is going to have a breakout season. But for Jaime, I just want to see him be more consistent of a 3-point shooter. I want him to be more consistent as a defender, because this team kind of needs better on-ball defenders than Hero, Rozier. It's a little bit questionable for sure. Duncan Robinson, who's going to be out there a ton. I wonder how they're going to incorporate Khalil Ware into this rotation. Will we ever see Khalil and Bam together? Is Bam going to be a breakout three-point shooter? We'll have to see. This Heat team does have a high ceiling if we get a locked-in Jimmy, locked-in Spo, and you don't really want to see this team in the playoffs, but they could also have the season from hell. Injuries happen, defense isn't great, and Jimmy's traded in February. The Atlanta Hawks are definitely going to be an interesting team this season. They got maybe worse, about like team-wise in the offseason, trading away DeJounte Murray for the only players you got in return were Dyson Daniels and Larry Nance. But they added the number 1 pick in Zachary Sachet, who I think is going to have a very good rookie season. I think he could win Rookie of the Year. People were off about him in the summer league, but he was tired. He was coming overseas where he didn't really get a break from basketball. But then he got a little bit of time off at the end of the summer. He looked polished in the preseason. He looked more comfortable on the floor. I think the feel for the game was better. Knew where to be in the half court. I think Trae Young is going to want to prove people that he could still be the best Eastern Conference point guard in the NBA. They're going to be a play-in tournament team. I believe Jalen Johnson is going to be flirting with most improved player all season long. See another breakout. And I believe the contract size of Clint Capella is going to be too big, where he's going to be a buyout candidate after the trade deadline. Just because I don't think anybody's matching $20 million a year for Clint Capella in the year, what would be 2025. And we're finally going to be able to see Onyeka Okongwu as the starting center in Atlanta. And the team I think is going to finish last in the Eastern Conference is going to be the Washington Wizards. They're going to be a bottom 2 team in the Eastern Conference. They're going to be going head to head with the Brooklyn Nets for the 15th seed. Now, what could be a little bit more exciting for Washington, though, they have a better young core than Brooklyn, because you could to watch Bub and George and Bilal and Kispert, who got extended, and Sarr every night. I believe Kuzma is going to be traded this year if his shot doesn't crater, unless he's shooting 42% from the field, 33% from 3, then maybe he's not going to get traded because they're not going to get good enough value. I do also believe that Sarr and Bilal are going to struggle compared to their expectations. We're going to see the development. For Sarr, this is a 2, 3, 4-year development project with him. So if he's not top 5 in Rookie of the Year voting, do not count him out. He's got a raw feel for the game. He's got to feel more comfortable on the floor. And I think he's going to struggle because he's not going to have like a true point guard if Malcolm Brogdon is going to be hurt. And I think Bilal, like Sarr, was also a multiple-year development project. We're going to see the signs of development from Bilal, but there's definitely going to be some things where you're like, okay, he's definitely still a year away, because that's what he was coming from the Metropolitans. 92 over there playing with Wemby in the 2023 season. All right, let's get over here to the Western Conference. Let's talk about the Pacific Division. The LA Lakers finish around the 8 to 10 seed in the Western Conference. I don't think they have a super high ceiling unless they make a shocking trade at the deadline. I believe D'Lo is going to get traded, and I think Dalton Connect is going to be their 6th man by the end of the year, because he's going to be such a good 3-point shooter out of the gate. I believe he could be better than what Jaime Jaquez was last year for the Heat. And now I don't know about his ceiling long term, because he's definitely more further along than some of the other guys that got drafted in 2024. But he's going to be good out of the gate, and I think he's going to be more reliable than Gabe Vincent or Jared Vanderbilt or those guys in Los Angeles. Could there be a big trade? For sure, because LeBron, it's going to be his final year. Who knows? He doesn't have many years left. How many more years are you going to get a prime AD? They could move the D'Lo contract, and I think they will, just because him and Reeves in the backcourt defensively isn't going to really work out. They could tag that with maybe the Vanderbilt contract, or Vincent, or Hashimura. They have Hood-Schifino, Christie, some young guys they can move, and then they could move some swaps or first-round picks. I think they make, I don't know if it's a desperate move, but an all-in move this year. For the Clippers, I don't believe they make the plan. Kawhi's already out. I was already skeptical about them making the plan to begin with. I think they could also make a desperate move. They try to go after Brandon Ingram or Jeremy Grant, or one of those guys that won't cost too much. Maybe Zach LaVine, just to get them through the regular season, because they don't own their first-round pick this year. So say they miss the play-in tournament, their pick goes from 11 to 1. They get somehow lucky there. That's going to OKC. So you don't really want that to happen, especially in this 2025 draft. I don't think we're going to get Rockets Harden. I don't think we're going to get Brooklyn Harden. He is up there in age, and I think we would have seen that already. I would be very shocked if we get that version of Harden this year. So Clippers fans, hold your breath. Maybe a desperate move can turn your season around if it is a Zach LaVine or somebody like that. But if this is the roster we have right now, I don't think they make the play-in tournament. Another interesting team this year in the Pacific Division, the Golden State Warriors. I believe that Buddy Hield is just going to replace Clay very well, and he's going to show everybody that he is a top 5 3-point shooter in this league. And I also think that Brandon Podziemski and Jonathan Kuminga, or Brandon Podziemski is going to be better than Jonathan Kuminga this year. Kuminga did not get that rookie extension that we saw Şengün, Jalen Johnson, and all these guys get leading up to the deadline. And I don't know how it's going to be in Golden State this year. Do they try to use him as a trade piece? Do they try to make a desperate move this year to try to do something with Curry because they didn't get Markkanen in the offseason? I believe they have to do that. I think that Golden State will have to do that at the deadline. Here are my Phoenix Suns predictions. KD and Booker both flirt with all NBA teams this season. Once again, Bradley Beal is going to be really good also. And the center issue is going to be a constant topic all season long. Bradley Beal was actually a pretty good number 3 option last year, and he was banged up. And it's just because of the contract. People are going to be like, that is not a good player relative to what he's getting paid per year. And that is always going to be true because he's getting paid top 5 in the league money, has a no trade clause and all of that, got the Supermax from Washington, but he is a good number 3 option. It's just their defense is going to be an issue, and if we're going to have Jusuf Nurkic rim protecting this team and being the anchor of this defense, they're going to need to make another move at the deadline. It's going to be tough, though, to find a center on the market. Maybe they can get Clint Capella, who is better defensively than Nurkic, not by much, but yeah, the center issue is going to be a constant topic all year long. For Sacramento, DeMar is going to struggle to fit in the first half. Maybe it's going to take some time for him to gel into the Sacramento system. I do wonder how this closing 5 of, let's say it is it's Fox, it's Keon Ellis, it's DeRozan, Sabonis, and Murray. You only have one super reliable 3-point shooter in that closing 5, and that is Keegan Murray. So if teams can take away his 3-point shot, you're going to try to let Fox beat you from 3 or Keon. And these guys can be good 3-point shooters, but we haven't seen it nearly enough where they could be hitting clutch 3-point shots majority of the time, especially DeRozan, who has not really adapted a 3-point shot too much into his career. But I do think that they are going to be one of the most fun offensive teams once again. I believe like maybe the Knicks and some teams we'll get to, maybe even Philadelphia, they could get off to a slower start and they could be around the 8 seed, 9 seed through the first half of the year. But I do believe they're going to be a playoff team this season. All right, let's go over to the Northwest Division. Let's talk about the Utah Jazz. I don't think they make the play-in tournament once again. Man, it's just been kind of not disappointing for them in the post-Mitchell Gobert trade because I think their rebuild is still in a solid place with all their young assets. And I mean, the picks, they're not the greatest picks in the world, right? Because Minnesota has Anthony Edwards, so I don't expect them to be a non-playoff team for quite some time. And the Cavs have still a great core together right now. And even if they move Mitchell down the line, like who knows, like they're still going to be a team that's making the playoffs. So I don't know if those picks are going to be too much. So if they want to get a Cooper Flagg and AJ DeBanza and Cameron Boozer over the years, they need that to be with their picks. So I do believe that they're going to trade Colin Sexton at the deadline. They can get good value for him, excuse me. And I do believe Walker Kessler is going to bounce back in year number 3. He's going to get some most improved player votes. He could end up on an all-defensive team as well. But I fully expect for Utah to realize we get no benefit out of being in the play-in, even though they want to. So I could see them moving off some of their veterans at the deadline. Sexton, Clarkson, you hopefully bottom out this year. And then this could be the year you add Cooper Flagg or Ace Bailey to Lauri Markkanen, and then it's full steam ahead in 2026. Next Northwest Division team we're going to talk about, the Portland Trailblazers, maybe the most talented projected 15th seed of all time. I do think that Jeremy Grant or DeAndre Ayton is traded. Now, those contracts are pretty big, and that would be a little bit more shocking if those guys are traded over like a Robert Williams, but I do think that teams, maybe it's Milwaukee or the Clippers, are going to be calling up Portland, and I don't think it would take much to get one of those guys. Scoot is going to have a much better year, too. We had a good finish to last year's season, and I also believe that this is going to be the last year of Chauncey Billups coaching this Blazers team. There could be a good head coach on the market, and with this team most likely heading to being a 15 seed or 14 seed, they may try to go in a different direction, especially if we don't see the development from some of these young guys. And I think all eyes could also be on Denny Avdija. If he takes a step back from what he was in Washington last year, ownership, front office may look at Chauncey Billups and view him not as the right man for the job going forward. Denver's got a lot of eyes on them because they lost KCP this offseason. They just paid Aaron Gordon a ton of money. They're going to struggle throughout the regular season to their standards. Their standards are being a top 3 seed, I believe, or have them finishing as the 4th or the 5th seed at the end of the year. I also know, I think this is a strong take for me, that Julian Strawther is going to replace KCP more than Christian Brown this season. He definitely needs to be a little bit better with his tunnel vision and his playmaking ability in the half court and just kind of flow in together with this offense, because that is something Christian Brown does better than Strawther. But if Strawther could just become a little bit better of a passer and his vision can get up, he's going to be the closing shooting guard for them over Christian Brown in crunch time. The Thunder are going to be the top seed in the Western Conference. You guys know, if you watch any of my other stuff or if you follow me on Twitter, I'm very high on the OKC Thunder this year. I believe that Kendrick Williams is going to be traded at the deadline, making around $6-7 million, and that could match up well with somebody on the open market. And we all know that they have these draft picks, or maybe even another young piece that maybe it's like a Trey Man that is not going to get the opportunity there. Maybe it's an Ousmane Dieng that gets traded at the deadline with Kendrick Williams. And I have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander winning MVP this season. I do think, at least in the regular season, seeding-wise, player award-wise, this is going to be the year of the OKC Thunder. For Minnesota, I believe they're going to struggle at first, like New York. They're going to maybe have to figure out what's working on this team. Can we have Randall and Gobert? How does Naz Reid work into that closing five? What about Jaden McDaniels, Ant, Conley? All these guys, they got to figure out. Chris Finch is going to have a lot of work to figure out what is the best closing five and the most efficient five out of this group. Because DiVincenzo also, I think, can be super clutch and a reliable three-point shooter for them. I could see them as a 5 to 7 seed in December, but they're going to end up just fine as a top 3 seed in the Western Conference. Could theoretically win the championship, but they need Ant to go into another tier, that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander tier this year. And let's finish this off with the Southwest Division. The Dallas Mavericks, I do think that Quentin Grimes ends up being in the closing rotation over Klay Thompson at the end of the season. Yes, Klay can be an elite three-point shooter this year. You like the versatility that PJ Washington gives you at the four, because he's a good defender, not a great defender, and he can space the floor in some way. Hopefully he's a little bit better from three this year for them. You have either Derek Lively or Gafford at the 5, and Kyrie and Luka are not going anywhere in that backcourt. So you need someone that can pick up teams' best wing players or guards, because it's not going to be Luka or Kyrie, and PJ Washington can only take you so far. So Quentin Grimes, because I do think he's a little bit more reliable as a three-point shooter than Najee Marshall, will end up being so important for this team. And when we look back at that Tim Hardaway Jr. for Quentin Grimes trade, that is going to be one of the best and most underrated moves from this offseason. The Houston Rockets made notable re-signings at the deadline for their rookie eligible guys in Jalen Green and Alperen Şengün. If Jalen Green, though, doesn't take the next step this season, it's going to be kind of interesting in Houston, because then maybe they look to pivot to moving him next offseason. It was like the first of its kind, because it's a 3-year deal. Player opted out of the last year. Could be $100 million guaranteed for Jalen Green. And Şengün also got the rookie extension as well. I'm excited to watch those two this year, but I think I'm more excited to watch Amen Thompson and Reed Sheppard. Reed Sheppard was one of my favorite prospects in this draft, and he's looked so good in the summer league in the preseason. I wonder what the opportunity is going to be for them. Houston's got a weird ceiling too, because they went 41-41 last year. They have a good coach, deep roster, young players that can have the internal development, and even draft picks to make a move as well. So we could look at Houston as maybe like an OKC light at the end of the year, but if they don't maybe reach their expectations and they don't make the play-in tournament or the playoffs, they have the assets to make a massive move next offseason. Let's talk about the Memphis Grizzlies, who had the season from hell last year. Everybody got hurt, and they were one of the worst teams in the league, so they drafted Zach Edey. I think he's going to be good in the regular season, Zach Edey, but I don't think he's going to close out games for them just due to his inability to space the floor. And teams are going to figure out a way to attack him like they do with Rudy Gobert. And I believe that Jaren Jackson Jr. is going to be back in Defensive Player of the Year talks like he was in 2023 when he won that award. I don't think Memphis is going to make a run in the playoffs. They could get bounced in round 1. They could get bounced in round 2, but they are going to be a good regular season team again. But also, like some other teams, may take a little bit of time to gel together with Marcus Smart and Zach Edey in this rotation. Now let's talk about the San Antonio Spurs. I'm not as high on the San Antonio Spurs. I'm taking their under this year wins-wise. I don't think they make the play-in tournament. It's just not that good of a team. Like on paper, you have to play Harrison Barnes now. Zach Collins is making a ton of money. Keldon Johnson took kind of a step back last season. So I think this team is going to flirt with being 13th seed, 12th seed, maybe 11th seed in the Western Conference if all things go well. But they're going to trade Chris Paul at the trade deadline, hopefully to a contender. But yeah, Wemby's going to be in all NBA conversations because he's going to be in DPOY conversations and he's going to be insane offensively. But if there isn't a Wemby injury, this team is screwed. They're living and dying by Wemby this year. And lastly, for the New Orleans Pelicans, they trade Brandon Ingram in February. They just re-signed Trey Murphy. You really can't be paying all these wings and giving all these guys minutes. It's going to be weird for them to gel together. They're going to end the season around the 7th to 10th seed in the Western Conference. And I'm not saying he's going to get fired. I'm not even saying he's a bad coach. I like Willie Green. But I think if this is a disappointing season, which with how talented the West is, will they be able to gel together? That is uncertain. Will Willie Green get fired at the end of the year? That could be in conversations. But I'm very high on Zion Williamson this year. And I think he could be a sneaky guy that gets MVP votes at the end of the year. So that is going to be it for me. I hope you guys did enjoy maybe the return here to the Just Ballin podcast. I'm very excited to talk about this NBA season with you guys. I'm just excited it's here. All the takes we made in the offseason, all the predictions are going to just be on full display this year. And I think there's still a decent amount of parity in this league. Even though everybody's predicting the Celtics and the Thunder to go to the finals, I would not be totally shocked if we see the Mavericks go back, or the Knicks go, or Milwaukee. Who knows? There's just a lot of things to talk about this NBA season, and I'm very excited it is back. Hope you guys did enjoy. If you're watching on YouTube, I'd appreciate it if you drop a thumbs up. Let me know in the comments your final predictions for the season. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, like always, appreciate a rating and review. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.